Okay, President Joyce, we're all set. Back to you.
Um, we'll now continue rulemaking policy discussion regarding proposed pharmacy prescription lockers mailings B3 and B3 with staff member Efremov.
Thank you, Staff Member Efremov. We will start with a PowerPoint presentation that is the mailing B3. I'm a very visual learner, so it helps me, at least when I'm summarizing or we're reviewing things of where we've been, to just have some visual image as we go through. So to start the slide deck, you can go to the next slide. And this is just a reminder, as always, we start every policy discussion with our mission to help us guide through our conversations. The board is tasked with ensuring the high standards in practice through effective regulation to ensure patient safety, health, and welfare of Oregonians. Next slide. Right. To begin, we'll revisit the recent history or background regarding pharmacy prescription lockers. So in 2025, Senate Bill 236, which has now been codified to ORS 689-338, passed and stated the following. Pharmacy prescription locker means a mechanical device that serves as an extension of a retail drug outlet's will call or point of sale area in which completed patient-specific prescription drugs, devices, and related supplies and non-prescription drug devices and related supplies are stored for pickup. Run 2, a retail drug outlet may operate one or more pharmacy prescription lockers located within that state and need not be at the same physical address as the retail drug outlet. A pharmacy prescription locker operated pursuant to this section is considered part of the retail drug outlet, and a separate separate license or registration from the State Board of Pharmacy is not required. Due to this statutory change, PPLs were placed in the highest priority category of the rules priority list, and the board began policy discussions at the October board meeting. At the October board meeting, we discussed defining attributes or parameters that a locker must meet to operate safely and to ensure that the prescription is accurately filled, integrity is maintained, and the prescription is delivered to the correct patient. The board was provided in your resource folder the NABP model rules along with other state regulations and key attributes comparison spreadsheet. For assessing NABP model rules and other state regulations on automated dispensing machines or direct to patients dispensing, reoccurring parameters were identified. Safety and security, patient interaction and communication, technology, and record keeping. We will quickly revisit these on the next 4 slides. Note that these are the same slides that were presented in October. You can go to the next slide. So again, here's those 4 parameters that we found as reoccurring. The next slide. So at the October board meeting, the board contemplated all of these topics for safety and security. So you assessed locker location, pharmacist supervision, video and auditory communication, storage, prevention and of theft and diversion, preventing unauthorized access, maintaining confidentiality. What are the PIC's responsibilities? How does training look? How are drugs to be returned? Can they be returned? Ceasing operations, continued quality improvement, and a list of outlet P&Ps that could potentially be specific to the PPL. Next slide. Oh, policy and procedures, P&P, I apologize. Next slide is patient interaction and communication. So the board contemplated all of these in your discussion related to patient consent, how to orient the patient to the use of the PPL, notifications, whether it's counseling or notifying the public that the PPL is non-operational, or pharmacy contact information to get a hold of the pharmacy or pharmacist related to releasing to the correct patient or patient's agent, video and auditory communications, and potentially requiring a pharmacist to be available while it's in operation. Go to the next slide. And for technology, the board contemplated a security system, patient identification, video and audio communication systems, and video surveillance. Go to the next slide. And lastly, for record keeping, the board contemplated records of prescriptions, records of PPL access, and surveillance system. Go to the next slide. So here's the list of board direction from the October board meeting. I thought it might be helpful to help remind us where we landed so that when we look at the rules, we can see those applied. It's important to note that board direction means consensus, so majority. So all of you might not agree with this list, but from what the direction was from the board, or the majority of board members on each topic is what is listed here. And since we only have 8 board members, there were some things that the board was split on, so we provided suggestions in those circumstances. The directions were as follows. Ensure the same requirements of a pharmacy and remove any duplicative references where possible. Example training is in OAR 855-041-1018, paren 3. It states ensure all licensees are trained to appropriately perform their duties prior to engaging or insisting in the practice of pharmacy. And thus, this would not need to be rearticulated in Division 143 as it already applies, and the expectation would already exist. Next, when possible, state what must be achieved, not how to achieve it. This will allow flexibility for the outlet to determine that. Next is notification to the board to require on application and renewals that a pharmacy notify the board that they're utilizing a PPL and where it is. This is needed to regulate effectively and to be able to inspect efficiently. For patient communication, patient permission is required prior to placing their prescriptions in a locker. And secondarily, staff was asked to review requirements for patient notification that are listed in law and to articulate what must be provided at a locker at a minimum. For counseling, no additional requirements from what it currently is required for a pharmacy or pharmacist. For the PIC inspection, a physical inspection to occur annually at the time of self-inspection. For storage of drug devices or supplies, requested 2 options for review related to 1, only permitting drugs and devices and supplies to be in the locker, with a secondary option to permit other products like food, as long as they are not commingled with the drugs. For controlled substances, requested 2 options for review. Specifically articulate no controlled substances are permitted, as is our current understanding of the DEA regulations, or stay silent knowing that they are not permitted and that it is a licensee's and a registrant's responsibility to do their due diligence. For security, broaden language and keep many components of the section, but better placed in a different section of rules. So we moved many of those up into the general section. Similarly, for technology, there's many good components that were requested to be kept, but to keep this section broader, related in removing related specific technologies as they can become outdated quickly. And again, many of those components that were needed were moved up into the general section. We removed the distance restrictions, so a PPL may be at any distance from the pharmacy, and they of course would still have to follow all of the other regulations to operate in compliance. For policy and procedures, ensure specifically addressed to a PPL, so what is currently listed in 41 to articulate that those would have to be accounted for specifically for the pharmacy prescription locker, and then to add any other needed policy and procedures related to PPLs. For records, keep what is needed specifically for a PPL, and all other records would be captured in other divisions. Slide. Lastly, at the October board meeting, we discussed the board's division vision with a suggested revision to remove Division 143 and merge this into Division 41. Since a PPL is now a mechanical device that serves as an extension of an Oregon retail drug outlet's will call or point of sale, in which patient-specific prescription drugs and devices and supplies are stored for pickup and thus no longer requires a separate registration. When staff sat down and tried to merge 143 with 41 as it is currently written, it was determined that this would likely cause more confusion and could not be clearly articulated in a way that licensees and the public deserve. Our proposal at this time would be to keep this set of rules in Division 143. We have modified the draft to clearly state that a pharmacy must follow all state and federal laws and rules, and if operating a PPL, these regulations also. So as needed, we clarified in sections, for example, the PMP requirements in Division 41 must all be specific to the PPL, but also adding additional PPL specific policy and procedures. We tried our best to ensure that if a requirement is in Division 41, it would not be re-articulated here. And when the Division 41 renovations occur, the expectation is that Division 143 will be folded into the new 136, which you can see up there. 136 is retail pharmacies, whenever we have the opportunity to do so. And next slide. I did.
Awesome.
So for rules review, before we move on to rules review, I would like the board to think about next steps after the rules today. Once rule review is complete, we'll ask the board for direction. If appropriate edits can be made in real time or per board direction, and there's board consensus, you could choose to send this out for public feedback, similarly potentially to what we did yesterday with the compounding rules. Or you could also choose to have more edits that might need to come back at a future board meeting, but just wanted to make sure that that other option of another layer of public feedback could be captured on this as well. And with that, we will move on to mailing B3A. Great. And so staff member Efroff, I'll just orient a little bit as staff member Melvin pulls this up. As you just heard in the recap related to the structural changes that we are proposing to keep this in Division 143 for now. So you will see that as it is reflected in the mailings and what is being pulled up. The new language is bolded and underlined with a highlighted added at the beginning of the line for any changes made, either additions or deletions. For this review, we will do the same format. I'll posit each section of the rules, orient the board and the public to the language proposed, and then request board input and comments. We'll conduct a round robin, give everyone an opportunity to speak, and then we'll go back and allow any additional comments after everyone has had a chance to share their thoughts. And I think we are here now. We can begin reviewing the proposed pharmacy prescription locker rules. This is just the gray box. So staff would like the board to know too, we did prepare this, not that we would expect you to, but if and when this does go to rulemaking, that this is in the format that it would be needed to go for. So that is what you are looking at this time. Scrolling down, and we'll start with the purpose and scope. So that will be 855-143-0001. Thank you. And so this section has been updated as suggested and proposed at the October board meeting to remove the reference to an affiliated pharmacy as that is no longer applicable. So very minor edit here. So I will just pause and open it up to the broad group if there's any discussion related to the purpose and scope. Right, moving on to the next section. We'll go to definitions for the public. That's 855-143-0005. This section is also updated with only a minor change, and it is really just reflecting that current statute number. So we went back through and got rid of the bill number since we now have it codified. And this is, other than that, the same as what the board reviewed at the October board meeting. So again, I'll just open this broadly for any discussion. All right, we'll move on to the general section then. Oh, I apologize, Board Member Patel.
Member Patel, I don't know something. Let's keep reading this definition, and we know what our intent is. This means a mechanical device that serve as an extension of Oregon registered retail drug outlet, will call, and point of sale. And I want to make sure a drug outlet, or I don't know if someone is going to do that, but I don't want like someone just put the gym locker and then count that as a, prescription locker box. I want some wording in it that they understand that it has to be secure and it has to be integrated with your current dispensing software, because that's what current is. All your will call point of sale system is integrated with your current dispensing software. So you have all the tracking and all the data. Something go wrong. So it's something we should word it that it should be integrated with your current dispensing software system.
Board Member Cover?
Board Member Kruger, I think for this part of the rule, this is just reflecting what's in statute. And I think when you go further in the rule, most of what I think your potential concerns are addressed.
Yeah, Staff Member Efroff, I think one important thing to keep in mind too that I know I struggle with when writing is that definitions really shouldn't have requirements in them. All the requirements should be later in the rule. You're really just defining what something is. So that is where this is straight from statute, but I'm going to let Board Counsel elaborate more on this
Yeah.
discussion?
Yes and no, right? Like,
Okay.
so we do have it later on, but you should look at how it's written later on, because I'm not quite sure it's a requirement. Right? Like, it's like, I don't believe we wrote it in a way that it is a requirement.
So staff member Efremov, I think at least about the, using a system that is, that communicates from the pharmacy to the locker is within the technology component. And I think the security components, you can definitely have a robust discussion as the language is very broad on, is that specific enough to mean potentially not your high school locker? Instead, it's something that needs to be a little more robust. And I don't know how you would interface technology from the computer system in the pharmacy to the high school locker. So I think we do get there, but I think this is a great point for all board members to be aware of this as you're reading through the next rules, and we can revisit different sections and modify as needed.
Board Member Patel, the only reason I want to kind of, because your definition says, and then different, and then sometimes licensee understand that this is your definition set, what?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, like, if we,
You can always
yeah.
put it in
Yeah.
bold, right? It is hard to violate a definition.
Yeah.
You can violate a definition. It's not my favorite thing to do. Like, if I have to take a case, like, to say that, but I think it's a good point, because I don't know, that's how, just look, we need to look at it from that lens when you get to the other parts. And then one thing you could do, right, is like go back up here and add some of that in as well to try and like make sure it all connects. If that's what I want.
I don't want high school lockers.
That.
Right.
I'm just gonna make, we don't mean high school pharmacy. For those listening.
Pharmacy humor is encouraged in this conversation. Right, really,
They're locked.
yes. Really great points, and I'll try to be mindful too, to loop back and pause on where those are to make sure that we're having those discussions as a group too related to those comments raised. All right, moving into general section then. All right, so this section has been significantly modified, trying to achieve the board's direction from the October board meeting. It's important to note that many requirements listed previously in other sections were removed and placed into this section as it appeared to be most appropriate for many of those parameters to be here instead of duplicated in different sections. So for the security section, it had things like the Oregon pharmacist requirement to supervise and to authorize access. We pulled that up in here. Again, there were things in security related to access other than a patient and having supervision, direction, and control by a pharmacist. Again, that seems more appropriate in the general, related to maintenance work and unlicensed persons accessing while licensed individuals are there, or supervision and direction and control from the pharmacist. So those were all embedded and moved up into this section for outlet general requirements. The responsibilities of the pharmacy and the PIC, we re-articulated here and removed from those sections. Consent by the patient to place the prescription in the PPL, we put into the general. The requirement to provide number of the phone number of the pharmacy, the contact, and how to access the pharmacy and the pharmacist. And the PIC inspection were modified and added into this section. Outlet general supervision, the pharmacist supervision, again, was re-articulated in another section and pulled up into here. For outlet non-prescription drugs and supplies, that section would propose to be struck and remove and pull it up into here. And for the outlet controlled substances, we're going to have that policy discussion in this section as it seemed more appropriate to be said here. So as I mentioned, many of those sections later on we'll see as being possibly struck or removed related to being duplicate, but also being pulled up into this section for proposal and discussion at this time. So there are many policy discussions for this section. I thought it might be easiest to read the entirety of the rules so we all know where everything is, because this is substantially different. And then we'll go to each policy discussion, and then we'll open it back up for general discussion of the whole section. So we can try to keep a little bit of a measured discussion. So for this one, it's not super long, but I'm going to read it line for line just so everyone can kind of digest it and for the public to really get to be able to let this sink in too. So for general, 855-143-0010, paren 1, a pharmacy that has a PPL must, paren A, follow all pharmacy requirements in statute and rule. Paren B, follow all federal laws and rules. Paren C, disclose as part of the pharmacy's initial application and renewal if the pharmacy has a PPL and where each PPL is located. Paren D, receive patient permission prior to placing a prescription in a PPL. And in paren E, ensure a PPL displays required patient notification as follows. So staff went back, looked through the statute, worked at what appears to be required to be on the PPL or communicated to the patient utilizing the PPL. So ensure the PPL displays patient notification as follows. Per OAR 855-041-1035, we wanted to help with the specificity of adding 1G through H. So that has to do with the signage. So that is stating the pharmacy is able to substitute for less expensive drugs. That's the generic. Providing notification to patients in each language that there's the right to free, oral, competent interpretation and translation services. Paren C is providing notification, posting a closed sign at the entrance stating the hours of operation. So it's really the hours of operation. And paren D is that there is in a conspicuous manner, that a short-acting opiate antagonist is available and accurate hours of the pharmacy and an ability for the phone number to contact the pharmacy. Accurate hours of operation on each telephone greeting. I apologize. Each is a little bit different than what the one below is. And then for paren B, it's per ORS 689-615. So that is displaying licensure. That is the requirement in law that any holder of a certificate or license granted under this chapter shall display it conspicuously in the pharmacy or place of business to which it applies. Paren C, pharmacy contact phone number and pharmacy's hours of operation for the patient to have assistance. And in paren D, patient's notifications via signage on the PPL or through an electronic video monitor that requires the patient to acknowledge their review and understanding prior to retrieving the medication from a PPL. So this is trying to allow that to be done in electronic means instead of having to have 15 different signs pasted on the PPL so it could go through and that the patient must acknowledge their review of those notifications. Paren 2, the pharmacy and the pharmacist in charge must ensure. Paren A, drugs are stored and maintained pursuant to OAR 855-41-1035. 1035 is minimum equipments, so it has to do with appropriate equipment to maintain proper storage, and OAR 855-41-1036 has to do with drug storage. Paren B, only a licensee stocks and removes contents from the PPL. We'll talk about that further. Paren C, a pharmacist supervises, directs, and controls all PPL processes, including but not limited to the stocking and the removal of contents and maintenance of the PPL. Paren 3, the pharmacy may store drugs, devices, and related supplies together in a PPL. Anything that is not a drug, device, or related supply must be stored in a compartment separate from a drug, device, or related supply. This is one of those options, or option number 2 is listed. Paren 4, a PPL may only store items that are not a controlled substance, or option 2, to strike it. Paren 5, the PIC must complete a physical inspection of the PPL annually as part of their self-inspection of the pharmacy as required in OAR 855-115-0210, paren 1, paren H, and determine and control which licensee may access the PPL. Paren 6, the pharmacy may return to stock PPL drugs, devices, and associated supplies that were not picked up by the patient or the patient's agent and were stored and handled in compliance with these rules. And paren 7, the pharmacy may allow a patient or a patient's agent to pick up their drug, device, or related supply from a PPL when a pharmacist is not physically present in the pharmacy. Paren 7 is necessary because we need an exemption because in Division 41, it states in 1015 under paren 1 supervision, a pharmacy may only be operated when a pharmacist licensed to practice in the state is present. This means that the pharmacist must be physically present in the pharmacy or the facility. So what this is carving out, it needs to allow patients to be able to access the drugs at the PPL when a pharmacist is not working, because that was the direction for the board that you were changing from the previous iteration. So we want to make sure we keep that intact. So at this time, I wanted to go through the policy discussions, and then we'll just open it up broadly to the full discussion. So the first policy discussion is paren 2B. If you don't mind pulling that up and clicking on it so I can read it. All right. Okay, so this is my notes here too. So 2B is the pharmacy and the pharmacist in charge must ensure only a licensee stocks and removes contents from the PPL. So note, this revision was written as a licensee being required in order to permit the drug to be returned to the pharmacy, which was the board's direction at the last meeting. So as we had discussed, if the drug needs to be or would like to be returned to the pharmacy, as we had indicated down below, it would need to be a licensee, but it would open up to the board for further discussion. And I will start with Board President Joyce.
Board President Joyce, for this section, I do like what I'm seeing. And so there are some instances, like for example, a Pyxis ADM, where a repair person or maintenance person is accessing the Pyxis machine to repair it or to fix a broken medication pocket and whatnot. I guess the language in here, I think it is appropriate to cover that, to allow them to be able to access the machine, because they're not like stocking it or whatever by themselves. And we always, pharmacy staff, a licensee is always escorting any kind of Pyxis repair person, so they don't have, so they're not left alone with all these medications. So I don't see a scenario with the PPL where they would have access to the machine without a licensee being present. I just, that's just a thought that came up. Otherwise, I'm fine with this section. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Kirkbride?
Yes, I support this language. These are items that are in a will call that have not been sold, and we would want to be able to restock them just as we would items that are in our will call inside the four walls of our pharmacy. Just a point of clarification, are we not discussing any other language that's not highlighted for discussion?
If we could do the policy discussion first, I think it would be helpful, and then we'll open it back up to all the language. So yep, sorry. Board Member Smith?
Board Member Smith, yeah, this language makes sense to me based on the requirements that we have, so looks good, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Patel?
So I totally see the intent, and I agree the licensee should the drugs in the prescription locker and remove it if the drug is not picked up, and you can restock it. But then I think about this is the extension of the will call. I feel like clerk can sell the prescription. They can deliver it into stock, so we are treating it differently.
One thing I just want to point out, looks a little much. Say that, others do, but, the other thing I want to point out is that the other hard part with this, right, is that this could be a locker that's like across the hall. This could be a locker that's 150 miles away, right? So like the proper and safe storage of drugs going like across the hall versus going 150 miles away are very different things. So that's just one thing to think about, right? When you're writing this rule, it's applying to all of those things. So
Yes, and that's exactly what I was thinking. So if I have across the hall, because I know there's some pharmacy, they already have locker in their pharmacy, so they can have more broader access than, just the pharmacy hours. So to me is, well, if it's across the hall, then like, oh, my clerk cannot get that prescription if the patient is here to pick up, you know what I mean? Then like I had to send a technician or licensee or pharmacist, so I don't know how I feel about this one.
Board Member Panino?
Board Member Pinedo, I have nothing to add.
Board Member Coker?
Board Member Kroger, my caffeine is hitting at the right time this morning, and I'm really excited about this conversation. And just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much for putting together, I think, a really well drafted first kind of look at, well, not maybe first look, but first look at this card. So for this particular policy discussion, I see it kind of both ways. And I don't know if there's a way to adjust the wording on this so that we can meet the intent on. We already have that they have to be stored and maintained appropriately, right? And if you're gonna return them to stock, how do we ensure that that's happening? Now, a licensee stocking and removing it doesn't necessarily mean that those elements are being met just because it's a licensee stocking them. And the other thing that comes to mind is there are technologies, I presume, or future technologies where there could be barcode scanning or other technology to ensure that any person who is handling these packaged patient prescription drugs can ensure that it goes into the right locker for the right person, right? It's, I think of the Amazon lockers, right? It only pops open when, certain criteria are met. So I just don't know if having this restriction that only a licensee stocks and removes the contents actually meets the intent of us being, or the concern about if it goes back into stock, because I think that's what we're ultimately trying to ensure, that if it's going to be returned to stock and reused for a different patient, have we ensured the integrity of that product? To me, that's kind of what this is addressing. Now, who stocks it, who puts it in there? I don't see that as a difference from a mailman delivering a prescription to somebody's doorstep who's not a licensee, or UPS or DoorDash. Those aren't licensees, but those folks are handling those medications. Granted, they're technically post-sale because they've been paid for, but there's also technology, I presume, or outlets that would also, they're only going into the locker if we have sold them, essentially, and then this is just the last part of that delivery process. So, outlet A says, yes, we have this locker, it's much closer to where you live. I'm gonna sell this prescription, and then it will only be, received or delivered once you've accessed that particular locker. So I feel like the way this is worded is maybe a little bit too limiting, and doesn't fully meet the intent of that second part of, if it doesn't ultimately reach the patient, what happens to those drugs? And I don't know what the answer is, unfortunately, Bree, on how to word that. To ensure that that's, because I think in general, that was the intent of why we wanted to limit it. Is that if somebody's pulling it back into stock, can they tell if it's been, adulterated or under poor conditions? Is it soaking wet for some reason, deteriorating? I'm not quite sure how we meet that intent.
And Staff Member Ruffin, I think one other thing just to keep in mind is we're looking in prep for this too, looking at the definition in statute of what is the practice of pharmacy and the proper and safe storage of drugs and devices, and the maintenance of proper records regarding the safe drugs, storage of drugs and devices is considered the practice of pharmacy. So ensuring that only those that are licensed are able to assist in the practice of pharmacy was the contemplation, I thought, and how we were pulling this together.
And then the other point is that, on the sale from like FedEx, they are licensed, right? Like they have a license.
Yeah.
They have a. Yeah.
So Staff Member Ruffin, I think one
It's
point,
different.
yeah, so I think the maybe difference here at this time too is that what happens in a traditional retail pharmacy is that if maybe a mail order is a better example, right? That the prescription is now sold to the patient. There's a transaction where the patient is buying the prescription and then it is to be delivered to the patient. That delivery service, like FedEx and US Postal Service, they are registered with us to be 3PLs to be able to carry those medications. So I think there is a point of understanding here too, that to your point, Board Member Kroger, getting into the weeds of potentially business operations, if this really is a will call, then the prescription has not yet been sold. So it is still in the custody of the pharmacy and the practice of pharmacy and who can perform what duties related to that. And then assessing from the point of sale, what happens is maybe a different component, because I also don't think in a pharmacy, well, we could talk about other things maybe related to that, but I think that's kind of the intentionality that was looked at when writing these.
Totally understand. And I think that these could be used. They could be technically sold before they're put into these lockers too. So I think that the concern to me is that if we only limit it to that the will call and it isn't sold and it's not going to be technically sold, like I assume there's lots of different ways that these lockers could be utilized as an extension of the pharmacy for the ultimate delivery of these products. And so that thank you for informing me on the 3PL licensing or whatever that is. But yeah, like I said, I just think that the way this is currently written, I think it limits it too much in the sense of, and I think that the board member Patel also brought up, it's like, okay, so I have a unlicensed person across the hall, but they can't touch it, right, either. So I just think like the intent that we're trying to get at here, that it's only a licensee, I think is really prohibited and might not necessarily meet ultimately the intent of, these are, prescriptions that are somewhere else for the patient to then ultimately pick up. They could be sold, they could be in a system not sold until they're actually in the hand of the patient. It could be like mail, like could a mail order, well, I guess not, because that's not retail licensed pharmacy, but like what other uses are there? So, to me, it's almost the wording would be like the pharmacy and the PIC must ensure that the contents, that the that the stocking and removal of the contents from a PPL, meet, these requirements ultimately. And whether it's the other OARs.
So staff member from then you're saying anyone could do it potentially. But I guess I'm just trying to, how clear licensees are gonna ask these questions, right? So if it's that broad, what would that mean? Like, what is the intention of your meeting?
Well, I think the assumption of my meaning is that each outlet should, and this can go down to the discussions on their policies and procedures, is how is that outlet ensuring that it meets the intent of the law, right? And so, and I think we see this and have these discussions occasionally on, no, their policies and procedures did not meet our law, right? They have then violated that law and we are asking them to then update it. And that's kind of how I'm looking at that, because I think that gives maybe a little bit more freedom within the framework for these outlets to come up with a system that ensures the product in integrity. When it comes to the practice or the assisting of the practice of pharmacy, like some outlets will be like, no, we're only going to allow our licensed technicians or our certified pharmacy technicians to do this part of the process. Or, we have a courier system, they're 3PL licensed, we've got barcode scanning technology, we've got, all these other aspects that ultimately meet the other requirements. That's kind of how I'm looking at that, so.
Okay.
But I'm not necessarily, this is not, I don't want to drag the conversation on. I get the intent on this. I think if we get feedback, ultimately from others and they're like, no, this makes complete, like you said, and they're okay with it, great. I just don't want it to be so limiting from the get-go.
Okay, that's helpful. I'll finish the round robin if that's okay, and then open it up for everyone. Board member Chin,
Member Chin has nothing.
board member Hall.
Member Hall, I originally was thinking that should be a licensee, but I'm hearing the other opinion, and that is a good point. So I would like to kind of see it open it up a little bit more.
We'll open it up to everyone. Board member Joyce.
So question, so are they sold or not sold before they enter the locker?
So staff member from I think one key point is to look at the definition, right? So the definition of a PPL is that it is still the retail pharmacy. It is the will call. So, and will call prescriptions are not sold.
So they're not sold. Okay, well, that makes a difference.
Board member Patel.
So, and again, I understand, but ultimately, like even the current will call, not the prescription locker, when we return to stock, like the patient did not pick up, and when you do return to stock, you still check the prescription, you still check the integrity of the drugs before you put back on the stock. So same with the PPL too, like when you not licensee or non-licensee, when they bring back that drug, pharmacist has to definitely check the integrity, check the product before you put back on the shelf. So I think that is not going to go away anyway. And I think this should leave up to the organization that how they are going to meet the standard. Then you remove those unpicked up prescription, you remove from the locker and bring back to the pharmacy.
I have a question. So on the definition, the retail drug outlets will call or point of sale area where they're stored for pickup. So what is the point of sale area? What is that defined as? And could you say like point of sale area could be maybe a pharmacy sells all the prescriptions, keeps them behind the counter and only refunds the patient once they say they don't want it, right? Like that's not a practice that actually happens, but in theory that could, right? If you had their information on file or, you know, hey, I'm gonna pay for this ahead of time, my daughter's gonna come pick it up kind of thing. So like will call and point of sale, what is the difference between those?
I mean, it's not defined as far as you can tell anything. Like, I think that was, if you look at, you know, I'm guessing will call, I think the idea, right, was for it to be kind of like a will call area. But I don't know what the point of sale, if there could be discussion around that.
I get like, so, I'm sorry, this is, like I said, this is what I love to do is talk about words and, but will call. I think of when I've used will call myself, it's like concert tickets and I've already paid for it
I mean, that,
and
yeah,
it's sold, I just need to go pick it up. I guess like that's what I'm, like, to me, it still means it could be sold or it could be waiting to be sold until that patient swipes their credit card or taps at the actual prescription locker. Or there could be systems where that locker is not as sophisticated and to me, the prescription is already sold, it's just waiting for pickup. That's how I imagine it, but
That's the case, then that's true, Board Member Patel, because most of the time when we process the claim, the prescription is paid by the insurance company, paid by someone. It's just like not picked up at that time.
the copay would be, right?
it's just they're not selecting the code.
Does-
So it's like,
Definitely, if we could try to, everyone give your title and one person at a time speak, just so everyone on the
Sorry.
phone can, no, it's okay. I just want to make sure everyone can be heard. And I also wanted to pause to see if Board Member Pinedo had anything else to add so that we don't forget about Board Member Pinedo.
I'm stuck with the licensee and non-licensee with what the statute states and if that is going to change or not change. So my recommendation is to leave it as a licensee for now. I don't know.
Other thoughts or comments? I think we got a lot of feedback out. Board Member Kirkbride.
Remember Kirkbride, I just wanted to comment that I do recognize that we are in desperate need to address rules for the multitude of ways we deliver sold prescriptions. And that comes up often, and it's not currently addressed. In my mind, this is not that. And so when we look at the definition, and it appears to be driven by the statute, and I'm not sure we can change that. Will call. So I think it's pretty common knowledge, and yes, that is an interesting point that many of them could be fully paid, but I don't think the financial transaction is the only transaction. A prescription being sold also implies that the counseling requirements and all of the things. I think will call and point of sale are pretty clear that that's the pre-sold condition and most pharmacies, that's the place where you are holding the prescriptions with that the patient has not yet done all the requirements, which could include a financial transaction, could include, you know, required signatures on different things. It could include counseling and things are being held for pickup. Point of sale is the point where you are conducting the sale. So in my mind, these rules are for things that have not been sold yet. So I think trying to combine the two might be challenging and I think talking about rules for sold prescriptions maybe has to be addressed in a different place and maybe could be incorporated into prescription drug lockers, you know, if and when we get there, but I'm not sure, like trying to incorporate all of that now might make it too complex because that definition is maybe driven by the statute, and I don't know if the words will call are coming straight from the statute, but if it is, we might be very boxed in by those words because I don't know that that gives us the latitude to start talking about sold prescription.
Board Member Kroger, I respectfully disagree. I think the definition of will call or point of sale area is what's up in the air. And I believe it could be interpreted as either or. And I think the argument to me on the, it's not sold as an, when I put it into a practical mindset as an outlet, when I put something into a prescription locker that has not met the consultation requirements, the signage require, a patient has to sign for, would I even have that sitting in there if those requirements hadn't been met in the first place? Because to me, that seems like risky behavior where, oh, they opened it up, but then the pharmacist didn't reach out or they hadn't finished the other aspects of what needed to be done prior to selling it. So that's kind of, that's why I feel like this could go either way. If we want to, for the sake of kind of like moving on and making sure that we get through these rules before the end of the day. Like we could leave it as is, and this could also just be something that we specifically request feedback on from the public. Is this the right way to word this? Understanding the intent of this board is to ensure that we're meeting the statutory requirements, we're meeting the drug safety storage condition requirements, that we're meeting the requirements of how do we dispense these correctly. There could be other minds out there that have a way to meet all of those intents. To me, with this gray area of what does will call mean in the sense of and point of sale area. To me, I think it can be interpreted either way.
Their thoughts or comments? Okay, to summarize, I think we have good thoughts and direction documented for us to not that it may be possible. We can look into some of the conversation that was listed here too, related to looking at language varieties and other ways of assessing this and the so what maybe of that, right? What does that mean then on other things and how that could affect other aspects of this related to the practice, or is it not the practice, and how we could potentially write rules related to that and who may or may not be part of those things. And then it sounds like for now, we'll leave the languages is, and it will make sure to, when we do feedback, ask maybe more targeted questions, or just make sure that this one is a line alone instead of clumping together like some of the others, to make sure we get feedback on this one specifically. And I think finally, it's important to note, making sure that this is heard in the public session. I know it was brought up vaguely in the October session related on who can perform what, and that the board wanted to have more robust discussions in the future in public sessions related to potentially talking about these and how a bigger, broader conversation on how this impacts rules in generally. So I think there will be future board meeting discussions carved out for just this topic specifically alone too, so not to be overlooked. Sound okay? In consensus, head nods, thumbs up. Okay, great, really great thoughts. Thank you for all of your input. This is exactly what we need. Moving on to policy discussion number 2, should be paren 3. So paren 3 reads, pharmacy may store drugs, devices, and related supplies together in a PPL. Anything that is not a drug device or related supply may be stored in a compartment separate from a drug device or related supply. So the policy question here at this time is, did the board want to allow other things to be put in the pharmacy prescription locker, or do you only want it to be drugs and devices? And we did hear the conversation that if you're allowing everything, please make sure that the milk isn't put in with a prescription and explodes or freezes or something and causes other reactions within the compartment. So I will open it up for board discussion and start with Vice President Kerfred.
I think the option 1 gives outlets the most options because it says may, and then that leaves it up to the outlet to develop their own policy and procedures. personally would probably be fairly strict on that to avoid all the requests depending on my setting if I offered lots of groceries. But I don't think it's our business as the board to regulate that. So I think that option leaves it in the hands of the LM.
And staff member, just for clarity, option one that allows both, is the language okay as written for option one then too?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say option one, but the one
Oh, I
that
apologize.
does not say option
No,
two.
option
May, anything that's not a drug device or supply must be stored in a separate compartment, but it can be in the device, the mechanical device.
Thank you. Board Member Smith? You, Board Member Patel?
Yeah, board member Patel, I think one is fine.
You, Board Member Pinedo?
One.
Thank you. Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, shockingly, I don't have strong opinions on either, but yeah, so thank you.
Board Member Chin? Might be laughing a little too hard. Board Member Chin?
Board member Chin's, I'm option one and not restricting an outlet.
Board- Oh, I apologize. Thank you. Board Member Hall?
Member Hall, I agree, option one.
Board Member Joyce, Board President Joyce?
Or Joyce, yeah, I mean, obviously, hopefully they use discretion and not putting milk in there, but I mean, OTC items, right, are fine.
Mhm.
Ibuprofen, Tylenol, all that stuff, Pepto-Bismol.
Main board member Chin.
Please.
Board member, so in option one, in a separate,
Yeah, they can be.
they can put anything they want in there.
Right,
It could be the milk, so
I mean,
just can't.
is there gonna be a PPL with that capability of putting?
It's better.
So we just want it to be broad, not restrictive. Okay, yeah. That's
All right, feel like we have clear direction on that. Thank you. We'll keep option one and delete option two if you don't mind just deleting it if it's in real time. Great. All right, moving on to policy discussion number 3. This is paren 4. So paren 4 reads. Let's scroll back up. A PPL may only store items that are not a controlled substance, or the option to stay silent on this one. Board staff did want to just give an update on this. I apologize, let me grab my notes really quick. So one thing that we failed to articulate within our previous discussion is related to pseudoephedrine. So not necessarily prohibiting pseudoephedrine, but something for the board to consider. Pseudoephedrine has very specific requirements in ORS 475 for sale. It likely would be very difficult for an outlet to meet all of those requirements and be able to put it in a locker. Potentially they could, you could stay silent on it, but just wanted to raise that issue. It is also a controlled substance. So in the state of Oregon, it might be kind of a moot point related to this conversation in general with that also. But just wanted to let you know that we didn't think about that prior and thought that was something we should bring forth to the board to just think about and consider. Also, just to remember, it is our understanding that the DEA has not changed its stance and controlled substances are not permitted to be stored and dispensed from a PPO, even with the recent statute changes from our understanding. At the August board meeting, the board directed staff to send a second letter to the DEA requesting reconsideration of this stance. We sent it via certified mail and we did receive documentation that they have received our letter. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that we have been communicating with the DEA. I know other states have been communicating with the DEA on this too, and just wanted to put that out there. So we will open it up for policy discussion and we start with Board Member Smith.
Option 2, staying silent is the way to go. Just less is more. I think when it sometimes comes to specific laws, just kind of my take on it. Thank you.
Board Member Patel.
Stay silent.
Thank you. Board Member Pinedo.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Board Member Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, I think staying silent, and this goes back to one, like B, follow all federal laws and rules. And I'll just sneak in here. I don't know if this makes sense to say follow all applicable laws and rules for both of those, and if that's something, but I wanted to mention that.
Definitely make sure to hit that discussion up on the next rounds. Board Member Chin?
Remember Jen is comfortable with staying silent.
Board Member Hall?
Member Hall, I'm fine staying silent.
Board Member Joyce? Board President?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I wouldn't want to even open up that, silence.
Vice President Kirkbride?
I concur on staying silent.
Okay, we will delete it on this draft then. Just delete this, because it is the second. Thank you. Take this one moment. All right, I think that was all of the policy discussions for this section. So if we can scroll back up, I will open it up to any discussions on this section, but I first think it might be a good opportunity if we could discuss, if you go back to the very top, Rachel, to general requirements, sorry. The section, sorry, general requirement. So looking at, I think what Board Member Kroger has raised related to paren 1, a pharmacy that has a PPL must, paren A, follow all pharmacy requirements in statute and rule, potentially putting out there the follow all applicable pharmacy requirements in statute and rule and doing the same in paren B. Is that what you're suggesting? And please elaborate. Sorry, Board Member Kroger.
Yeah, I think it reads a little funny, like a pharmacy, all pharmacies must follow the rules, right? So, but I think because we're talking specifically in this part of the rule around the PPL, like, if they have to follow all rules, that means they have to have a sync, right? Like, so I think the word applicable to a PPL, just making it clear so that there isn't any confusion on that they need 3 feet of counter space and a sink next to the PPL.
So I think it would be good to do a round robin on this too, just to get all the other board members take on this additional language, and then we'll go back and give everyone an opportunity to comment on the full section. Board Member Chin, what are your thoughts related to, as revised, as you can see on the screen, follow all applicable pharmacy requirements in statute and rule, and follow all applicable federal laws and rules?
Board Member Chin agrees with that language.
Thank you, Board Member Hall.
Well, I agree.
Thank you, Board President Joyce.
President Joyce, yeah, putting the word applicable here is applicable.
Nicely done. Vice President Kroger. Oh my gosh, Kirkbride did it again today.
That's it. It's you or me, one of the two, not both.
Someone does
doing
it
it with Patel and Pineda too. I have no opinion.
Board Member Smith.
Board Member Smith, I think that looks better with applicable on there. Thank you.
Board Member Patel.
Remember Patel, I'm thinking a little bit different. So do we even need A and B? It's just because it's the extension of the will call. So outlet is going to, we already have clear that the outlet must follow all the federal laws and rule, and this is just part of that extension. So why we are doing this? Like,
Staff Member Efremov, the intention here is because this is a standalone division. So you would have to refer back to the other divisions to say all of these do apply. If you don't say it, then they don't. So the intention, if we merged it into 41, you would not need these. So eventually those will go away, but currently we need these to refer back so that everyone knows that they are required to follow all of the pharmacy regulations.
okay, if that's the case, then yes, applicant.
And Board Member Benito?
Yes, it looks good how it is.
Thank you. Then with that, I will start a round robin, maybe again, just we're gonna do the whole section. I guess I will ask. Maybe we could do like paren 1. Does anyone have questions? Paren 2, or would you like to just open it up to board members? Any questions, discussions on each of these? Maybe it's easier. I'll start with paren 1.
Yeah.
Is there any additional comments on paren 1? And if you could scroll down in just a second too, because there's A, B, C, D, a little bit further. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. If we could put it on one page, that would be helpful. Kind of long.
So 1.
Yep.
A,
Through the-
your hands up. Remember it now.
Okay. So, we'll start with Vice President Kirkbride, if that's okay.
I don't want to open a can of worms if we talked about this before, but we had some really nice language yesterday in the compounding discussion regarding the one-time notification of beginning compounding. And so when I saw the disclose the PPL at initial application and renewal, so I'm thinking about inspection, and I can't remember what our conversations were around inspections, but would there be a need for staff to know that there was a PPL if there, for example, if there was an inspection or a renewal happened, if they started the service before they reported it on their renewal form, would maybe that language we used in compounding for that one-time notification be useful here? But I can't remember if we discussed that previously or, and discarded that, or what the history was on that.
Yeah, staff member from us. So I think this was started off as being not only notifying that you're operating one, but notifying when you're closing one too. So then this was modified and pulled back to only knowing when initial operation, or I guess when operation is occurring. So the way staff looks at this, when you think about PPLs, PPLs could be located 300 miles from the pharmacy. So when we plan our inspections, it's a 2-year ahead of time, and we need to know where we're going to go and how to use resources efficiently, right? And we are required statute to do regular inspections of pharmacies. This is an extension of a pharmacy. We would be required to do those. So it can be very laborious to only have one-time notification and then not know if something is still operating or not, and drive the whole way out there and then don't know. We do communication of reaching out 4 weeks in advance for the 2-week time frame. But if someone doesn't respond to us, they just don't respond to us, and we still will be going out. So in this situation, if we just didn't get any communication back saying, hey, we're not operating it anymore, it could cause a delay, and it could be administrative burden on staff to be able to handle that. This was kind of a middle compromise. If we know if it's on the initial application, then we know where they are. And then secondarily, on renewal, it's a quick and easy box that they can just check that, yes, we're still operating one. And then staff would know from that. We could look it up in our software system and know when we're prepping for inspections. And if it's not there any longer, when we pull our new report, then it won't be there, and we'll remove it from our list of the 2 years. So it's a helpful way, and I think a very low burden on licensees to be able to just check the box at those 2 points of contact with us, but definitely open to hear board suggestions on how you would like to do that or change language in any way.
But I'm hearing staff is pretty okay with this language as far as the good middle ground.
I think it can get us where we need
Okay.
to be. Yes. Thank you. Any other comments or discussion related to that section? Sorry, is it
Just
it's
one.
a parenthesis?
1A through capital D.
And I believe, oh yes, go ahead, board member Hall.
Member Hall, I have the same question, and I'm just wondering about new lockers.
Mhm.
I think you were addressing like the closed lockers that we didn't know about, but what about there was a new one?
So staff
for inspection?
member FMF, we would only know when the pharmacy renews their license. So every year they will renew. So at the time of renewal for that pharmacy, if they add a locker, we would not know until potentially renewal. But we do 2-year inspection cycles. So for us, we could still probably get there. And again, staff was really trying our best to hear the board and make this as a least administrative burden for licensees and how they communicate with us, and have it be a way that could be a middle ground for everyone to operate effectively. Yes,
Board Member Patel.
please.
I don't have anything for C, but I want to talk about D.
Sure.
This is receive patient permission prior to placing a prescription in PPL. And I was thinking, well, think that should be on outlets, how they're going to communicate. Do we really have to write down here? Can we just, yes, silent why? Or statute don't say that we require that or anything like that. I mean, and if you're going to write down, then how, talking about the future, like, do we have to just say, someone called in on the phone like, hey, can you put my prescription in locker, and just say, yes. Then do we have to document? Do we have to like get the verbal or written authorization? If we're not going to do all those things, then I don't think so we need. I think we should leave that up to the outlet into their policy procedure. How they're going to communicate. I feel like this is more like patient and outlet communication than the board of pharmacy writing the book.
Board member Kroger, that was one of the points I wanted to bring up. It almost feels like a moot point that there is going to be some notification that it's in a locker, that there's going to be a request to be put in a locker. I think if we're not going to require it to be documented and recorded as such, then this goes down to more of like it's a customer service issue versus a safety issue, right? That around like, and the outlets are gonna want to be communicating with the patient. I think in rule, I don't think it's necessarily to explicitly say, because it could also be, you could word it as receive patient permission or notify the patient that they're putting it in a prescription locker. You know, and then if the patient doesn't want it in a locker, then they can talk to the pharmacy. Like, I just don't know if this is what we need to be regulating, especially if we're not requiring it to be documented.
Yeah, so staff member Efroff, this was discussed last time via policy discussion, and the majority was that patient permission would be provided prior to put in the locker. And just as a reminder too, NABP model rules are written that way, and all other states that have regulations that I can remember pretty much have this also requirement. But in addition, they did have the documentation requirement too. It was requiring the patient to approve and to document that approval. So part of the board's discussion, you didn't want to require the documentation because you thought that was too much for a pharmacy to have to do. So part of this was pulling that away and putting it in this language. I do hear what you're saying, again, related to companies to do business. You would think they would have to do that. But remember, again, if it's not in rules, you are not requiring anyone to do it. And again, your role is patient safety and what might need to be the minimum for patient safety, but there could be, as suggested by board member Kroger, a way to get there in a different way. So we do need to think about different populations too of individuals that might be houseless or homeless that don't have the ability to receive things or to get a text message or deny a text message via notification of a drug being put in. So just trying to think of maybe the elderly population who have difficulties working with technology and might not want to work a PPL. That could be frightening to them, overwhelming to them, might not be able to deny a notification. So I think there are a lot of different considerations for all people and meeting people where they're at. And there's probably a variety of ways to get there, and potentially there could be in a different language and a prohibition of not being able to dispense the prescription or whatever language board member Kroger had said related to having the patient, you're notifying the patient, I guess. But then if you notify the patient and the patient doesn't agree, but you just notified them, that still could cause other problems, but they could be self-limiting also because the patient's not going to pick up the prescription and then they're going to have to return that anyway. So there's a whole other things that might work themselves out related to the practice.
Board member Kroger, I completely agree with you, Bree, on the number of individuals who this would not be applicable for or could be problematic for. And I think about if we were to see a case that came to us because something was put into the locker and the patient was unable to get it and they didn't agree to it, the way I kind of imagine me looking at that case is, well, what did the outlet do to make sure the patient got the drug on time? That's on them. So if they didn't notify the patient, if they didn't get permission to put it in, they put it in there anyways, and now something bad happened to that patient, that's on them, and they should have had a solution for that. That's kind of how I see that. And that's where it would be unprofessional conduct, or it would,
Okay.
it's, to me, if they don't have a like I said, like, that's not a hill I'm gonna die on, but if they don't have a solution for the patient and they're gonna use these lockers, or they're gonna force the use of these lockers on patients, that's their choice to do so. But if they also choose not to do the right thing ultimately, the patient shows up at the pharmacy instead of the locker and they don't take care of that patient, and now there's a delay in care. To me, that's a very different conversation, and they have broken other rules within our law that we could absolutely cite them for and go back to what are your policies and procedures to ensure that patients are receiving timely care. That's kind of how I look at it. So to me, if we're not going to require them to document it, and I think you're right, I do remember this conversation, and if we want to keep this in there, that's fine, but we're not going to really be inspecting it per se, because how do you prove if you didn't document?
We could ask and ask them what their policy is, what their process is, and assess, but I hear what you're saying. Other comments yet, Board Member Patel?
However, Patel, then another thing is like, to be honest with you, most of the patient, they also get like, and we all are, get so much annoyed by so many taxes and spam tax and calls and everything we get, right? And so if you write down this, that means do I have to ask the patient every time? Like when you put the prescription, or it's just the one time? Like you agree that whenever your prescription is ready, I'm going to put in the locker, or it's going to be each refill multiple times in a day, and then you also have to remember, like, if the prescription locker is 150 miles or 300 miles away, and that was the legislative intent is, right? To make sure like you have the locker, prescription locker in the rural area as well, so people have access who cannot transport, who don't have the, transportation issue, phone, everything. But then you have to also understand that parent, or the outlet, they're also going to do like 2 or 3 times in a week, right? So me as a pharmacist, and I know that I'm going to fill this locker, and then I'm going to prepare the drug, and someone is going to deliver there. And then if I have to do prior permission, at that time, the pharmacist will be in the, like, should I keep this drug and patient get in the timely manner? Or should I have to get the permission? I'm not going to place. Now the patient is not going to get the drug in the prescription locker, and they have to come to the outlet, or they have to wait for a delay in the treatment. You know what I mean? And so that's the way I'm thinking about different scenarios.
Other thoughts? Board Member
Member
Cook?
Kirkbride, I can see both sides of the, discussion, whether or not it should be in there. I do think how it is currently worded is very generic. It doesn't ask the outlet to document anything. It doesn't tell them how to do it. It just says to receive permission. It doesn't address what the frequency of doing that. So I do think it's something, in that regard, that will be challenging to enforce if they present any kind of evidence that they did it at any time. I think that's gonna suffice. So I think it's a little bit innocuous to me. This is one of those things where I think we give it a try and we see how it goes, and we see if it becomes problematic, and then we can adjust language if it needs to be, stronger as far as, needing some sort of documentation, or licensees need more guidance, or we're finding that it's creating way too many questions and just needs to be removed. And if the only reason is because other states are doing it, but we're moving towards more of a standard of care model, and we don't see the need of it being in there, then we could take it out if it's driving a lot of questions and confusion. But to me, right now, it's fairly innocuous language, because it's not really telling them how to do it.
So at this time, it might be worth going around just to get everyone's feedback of if we leave it in, and we could get it just like we'll do for the licensee only component. We'll put it potentially, if the board's direction is to go out and get public feedback, we could leave it in a separate line of its own to ask for explicit comment on this section too, because as we showed before, we were kind of doing them as rule sets. We could do certain ones specifically alone, identifying that the board is asking for specific feedback on this, or potentially strike it at this time, or potentially other language if board members would like. And I apologize, I can't remember where we are in our round robin. I think it's board member Hall,
Summer Hall, I would say strike it for now and, we need to readdress later, then we can.
right? Board President Joyce?
Well, President Joyce, I mean, we're gonna survey monkey this out, right? So, I mean, I'm more in favor for leaving it in and then get the feedback.
Vice President Kirkbride?
I would be in favor of leaving it in.
Board Member Hall? Or Smith? Wow, Hall already went.
Okay, Board Member Smith. I'm in favor of leaving it in. I do think that as pharmacies start, putting in these lockers, they're gonna figure out robust ways to make sure that patients get these, and whether that's a text message notification or whatever, I mean, pharmacies already are doing the mailing, some limited mailing, like locally, and I have really good confidence in the pharmacy's ability to figure out a good way to do this. But I think leaving it in is a good idea. Thank you.
Board Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, I'm in favor of keeping it silent, strike down, and if there is need, then we'll figure it out in the future.
Board Member Padito?
Board Member Pinedo, I am in favor of leaving it in.
Thank you. Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, I can go either way. Thank you.
And Board Member Chin?
Board Member Chin would prefer to leave it in.
Okay, sounds good then. Staff feels like we got clear direction. We'll leave it in for now, and we'll make sure to highlight it in if and when you do public feedback and how you do public feedback. All right. Other comments on Paren 1?
You go. So, back to current one, this is just, this is a tricky one. So current one, little e, big A, and the requirement of the, opioid antagonist availability. I'm concerned about this being potentially confusing to the public. That in these instances where this is not necessarily in or near the parent pharmacy. So providing written notice that short-acting opioid antagonists and necessary medical supplies are available at the pharmacy. So like, I get the requirement at a pharmacy that actually has that stuff there, but this is the locker. And if somebody sees that sign and it's an emergency, right, like, that seems like that could end up being really problematic. So I don't know how to meet that requirement and not confuse the public at the same time. So that was just one concern I wanted to bring up that we may need to address or provide guidance on as we go forward.
Staff Member Ekromoff noted. I think, yes, we've had some of these internal discussions too on really the language as the law is written, ensuring that we're, as staff, providing you what we believe and understand to be the requirements. How you get there, what you do with that is your choice. We could talk more about it. I think in understanding the intention and kind of the conspicuous language, there's some interesting language related to it. If it is something that has to be posted and the patient's accepting on it, I hear what you're saying related to, is this going to cause actually more harm and miscommunication than actual communication of the intention, what we believe, what I'm guessing, I guess I don't know 100% of what the intention was, but really to increase access of these life-saving drugs and to let everyone in the public know that you can get these at your pharmacy. So it's not, they still can get them at their pharmacy. They just might not be able to get it at that moment from that PPL. So I noted, I don't know that I have any good suggestions. If anyone does, please feel free to speak up.
Member Kirkbride, I would suggest language to, I mean, we'll have to workshop this, but that if you're your PPL is, located in a remote location from your pharmacy, that you also have to post the address and location of your pharmacy, like.
And I think that is on here.
Yeah, it's already there.
So we do have that.
Right, yeah.
Maybe that could be a part of the sign. Like, that or not, look through, right, to the requirements, these are, well,
Or, I hate, I hate adding more requirements typically, but to me, this would almost be under little e, big A notice that opioid antagonists are not available at this PPL. They are only available at that pharmacy, to make it really clear. I don't know if this is that big of a problem, but it just, like, the way that reads, and, and I think the general signs that are out there, I don't know if they're standardized or if OHA has something people are supposed to post, I can't remember. But I would hate for just that sign that says opioid antagonist available at your pharmacy, and then somebody interpreting that, and maybe this is in a locker inside another retailer that just doesn't have a pharmacy, right? It's just hosting the PPL. And then somebody thinking like, go to the Bi-Mart, and, and then there actually isn't any open antagonist there, right? Like, that's what I don't want to see happen, so.
I totally hear, I'm sorry, I hear what you're saying. We can definitely need to ruminate on it a little, I think, and if I'd love to hear more suggestions on how to make that clear, or what the best way to support pharmacies and the public in understanding what that really means. Yeah, Board Member Patel.
Yeah, no, I also have the same when I see the other sign, and I think like this sign is for the outlet. Like, it's not necessary, you need all the signs on the PPL too. I think this is requirement for the outlet, and this is the part of it. I mean, like, I'm not going to have sign on the will call, and then I'm going to have a sign at the outlet, it's just.
The staff member from off, so we did go back to the law and try to assess what could be suffice at just being at the pharmacy, and what might have to be required at the PPL. And that was the list from our assessment of what the law states related to the language of the law, that they're all the, like 615, that you have a license at that location of business, you would have to post that, and everything from Division 41, 1035 through that citation. And again, that was part, I think, of the intentionality, if you could scroll a little down, Reach, related to paren D, I guess, sorry, it's little e, big D, patient notification via signage of the PPL, or you can do it through an electronic video monitor that requires the patient to acknowledge their review and understanding of this. So instead of having a bunch of signs, it would just be on the screen that they could click through to be able to read, to meet those notification requirements. Again, legislature's intention is to communicate to the public. This is the vehicle of public communication.
So the rule that we're going back to, it says that the signage is located where the prescriptions are dispensed or administered. So this would be that location where it's being dispensed. So it's not just the outlet requirement, it's where it's actually being dispensed. I'm okay with the requirements for the signage. This is the one of those requirements that PBLs weren't contemplated and the requirement, right? Like, so it just seems a little problematic, and I don't need to keep going.
Great discussion on that. Other comments on paren 1?
Board Member Chen, I would just agree with, some clearer language about the, naloxone or whatever you'll call it. That it isn't here, and that be bolded, because I think that can really create more public emergency than we're intending. Or we have, wasn't it the sheriff's office that had the dispensing machine instead of cigarettes? They had next to our PPS.
Totally understand. And staff member from off trying to think about this on the fly too a little bit, and not wanting to hear what the board's saying, and not wanting to add extra requirements potentially too. This is something that as we when these rules start to go through communication wise, this could be a newsletter too of something for companies to be aware of as they're preparing, that it might be in their best interest to communicate this in a clearer way. But if you believe it needs to be a requirement, obviously we can find a way to put that in rule. But I do, I think you've identified something that someone might not identify until 6 months or a year of operating a PPL, that there is that confusion. And then when it happens, it's not a good situation. You want to avoid it and to prepare for it. And you can't prepare for everything, but since you've identified it, it seems like we're communicating it now in a public forum, but also there are other avenues of communication. Okay. Anything else on paren 1?
The D here is the next one too.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna move to paren 2 then. Any discussion on paren 2? Or additional, I should say. Okay. Paren 3? Oh, sorry, go ahead, board member.
Parent two, it says the pharmacist supervise directs and controls all PPL process, including but not limited to the stocking and removal of the content and minute. The word, I don't know, there's something. Either it's feel like more repetitive because that is the big responsibility, but then why we are calling out that pharmacy supervise, I mean, your outlet already going to have a pharmacist, and of course, why we are calling out that one in the C, I don't see, I mean, if you have a will call, right, I mean, we don't say that, hey, pharmacist, supervise, I mean, like, you're doing it already. Why we write on C?
So staff member Efremov, again, this is not part of Division 41. So Division 41 does have the requirement of the pharmacist to oversee the pharmacy. So this is in related to the PPL specifically. So we needed to call something out specifically for clarity of the operations of the PPL. And the board did remove the requirement of a pharmacist to have real time to be accessible at all times. So this is just kind of pulling back a little bit to, it's a little broader and not as specific as all those other requirements that were required before, that it had to have a pharmacist counsel, and the pharmacist had to be available at any time. This is just general operations of PPL. So this is different than will call. There will be some differences, right? Because of the nature of what the machine is, we're not going to be able to fit everything in exactly how you would regulate a pharmacy. But other suggestions on different language or other discussions, or others have concerns with this language?
It's fine, yes, because it's different division.
Thank you. Paren 4 is silent, so no paren 4. We have a new paren 4, formerly paren 5. Please, board member Kroger.
Board member Kroger. 5B, determine and control which licensee may access the PPL. I get the intent behind this. I think this actually goes a little bit back to board member Patel's comment on 2C. I think what I would like to see here is more along the lines is that the PIC must ensure that training is like, to me, the determination and control of who's accessing it is, sometimes it's like, this is just part of your onboarding. You are getting trained on this. You are going to know how to use this. Everybody who walks in my pharmacy is getting the same training. So therefore, everybody is going to be able to access it and whatever. I think when we put this determine and control, it's almost saying we need a list of what those people, like who are those people? And I think that's maybe a bit administratively burdensome. And I think we have elsewhere in our rules around just like ensuring that appropriate training, like before accessing a PPL, appropriate training is completed by all licensees. Like that's kind of how I'm looking at that. And that in a sense is determining and controlling who has access to it, because they're not going to access it until they've gone through the training that the outlet or the pharmacist has determined is appropriate.
Staff member Efremov, just one point of clarification too. So we did remove the training component in these rules as is, but it's because Division 41 clearly articulates that you have to be trained to perform the functions prior to performing them in the assistance of practice of pharmacy, right? So that would apply here. And I think this was a previous, again, this is for the PIC, not the outlet. So the previous discussion was related to the board wanting to allow the PIC to be the one that's determining who accesses the PPL, not the outlet. But again, if you would like to do the outlet, it sounds like what board member Kroger had said would probably already be contemplated related to training, related to supervision, direction, and control if it's a licensee. It would all be incorporated in that, and then the document keeping of records would be the component of documenting who's accessing. So you're probably full circle there if you did want to strike this related to your comments. That's what I was just trying to like roll through, that it would be supported.
Yeah, I'm not saying the outlet should be determining control. I do think this goes back to the PIC is in control of their pharmacy. It's just the concern around the determination and control. It's how are they doing that? How would we expect them to document that? I don't want another piece of paper that ends up being like, oh, I forgot to add Priel on it. She was accessing it and now we've got a case, right? Like that's the situation I'm trying to avoid. Just one less thing. And I don't know if it's just referring back to another rule, which isn't great either, but that's kind of my comments on this one. So I think you understand what I mean.
Yeah. Board member Kirkbride.
Yeah, so we have the parent 2 that addresses the pharmacy and the PIC. I wonder if, so kind of 2 points. Does 2 little c address this already? What access would we be talking about that isn't stocking and removing, number 1? Or could we just add the word access in 2C? Would that be is the word access problematic? I think maybe some of our conversations were around the PIC might want to have a log of who had accessed it if there was, issues came up or something. I think there was some conversation if that's how that kind of stayed in here, but maybe we could combine this with 2C and get rid of it here.
Yeah, I think you're board member Kroger. I think you're right, board member Kirkbride, and all PPL processes encompasses who's accessing it.
As staff member from, I could totally see that, yes, that 2C could encompass all of that. Thus, if you don't mind scrolling back down. That potentially we're now at 4, sorry, formerly 5, 4B is no longer needed potentially. So maybe I could stop and do a round robin to see if board members are supportive in striking this. Is that the proposal? Because it's already encompassed in a different rule. And the understanding and intent of this would be that the PIC is still responsible for these functions in collaboration, obviously coordination of the outlet and onboarding and training and all of those other components would be incorporated too. I'll start with, oh, wow, I really forget where I am. So let's just start with board member Hall.
I think she was the last.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Board President Joyce. I do need to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with that. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about stocking and removing, and then so we want to potentially delete it. The conversation. 2B.
So for the public, we're talking about,
Determining control, which licensee,
sorry, you can't see it.
because it's covered in C, a little c, 2C. Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. I don't really have any strong points, but that, yeah.
President Kirkbride,
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
board member Smith,
Yeah, I'm okay with striking it.
board member Patel,
Board member Patel, okay, it's striking.
board member Pineno,
Yes, I'm okay with striking it.
board member Crawford,
Yeah, thank you.
board member Chin,
Agree.
and board member Hall.
I agree.
Awesome, thank you. I will pause again on former 5, current 4. Any further comments? Yep, it'll just be a 4. The A will come up and we will condense that and make it look pretty while we're here. Yes, board member Patel?
I have a comment on, for some odd reason, I don't like the number 5A. It says peak must complete a physical inspection of PPL annually as a part of the self-inspection of the pharmacy. And I agree, peak should do annually, and I'm not opposed not to do annual inspection. But only thing is just worrying me, what something happened to pick, like what he has to be a sick, hospitalized, something else, unable to go to that PPL, or why can't we have another pharmacist of that entity or another just Oregon licensed pharmacist can inspect the PPL, right? Let's say if I have 3 or 4, let's say for chain, right? Like, you have like 4 or 5 picks in the same region. Why can't different pharmacists can just annually do inspection for all PPL?
Staff member Efroff, just as a reminder too, this was previously in a different section of rules and it was a requirement for the PIC to go every 28 days to do a physical inspection. And then it was pulled up from the board discussion to why can't they just do it during their self-inspection? But this part was not raised as policy discussion. Does it have to be the PIC or could it be another pharmacist? I guess I would ask that to the board for that discussion. I don't think that discussion has been had yet.
Oh, I was just thinking
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, please open up. Board member.
Right, so I don't currently work in a retail pharmacy. What's the expectation now? Does the board look for the PIC that is registered for that pharmacy, or is it okay that any pharmacist has completed the self-inspection?
So the farm pig can complete the self-inspection, but the pig don't have to be present when the inspection happens, It can be off duty and still the inspection go on.
Yes, I understand that, but who does the board allow to complete the self-inspection for a retail and pharmacy drug outlet is my question.
Yes, member Efroff, I'm pulling up the rules too, because I don't want to misquote this, because technically it all does fall on the PIC, right? And are there certain things that the PIC can have others assist in the process, like say a controlled substance reconciliation? Ultimately, the PIC might be responsible for it, but who is conducting it? Or did our language get updated? Now I'm doing rules iteration here of where it landed today. So let me pull up let's pull up the
So
language
my
real quick.
opinion would be if it's allowed by rule for the pharmacy, for the drug outlet, I would say it should be allowed for the PPL. But if it's not allowed for the drug outlet, I would want to keep it consistent, I think, and have it be the PIC, but I'd like to hear that answer.
So it states, let's see, in addition, this is 855-115-0210, the PIC responsibilities, paren 1, in addition to the responsibilities of pharmacist outlined in OAR 855-115, a pharmacist in charge of a drug outlet pharmacy must, paren H, complete an annual self-inspection of the pharmacy using the self-inspection form provided by the board by July 1st of every year within 15 days of becoming PIC. The completed self-inspection forms must be signed and dated by the PIC and retained for 3 years from the date of completion. And paren I, ensure a controlled substance inventory with discrepancy reconciliation is accurately completed and documented. Then it gets into the details of it. So it is the PIC's responsibility to complete it, and they have to ensure a controlled substance inventory reconciliation is done.
I guess we could go both ways, right? So we could treat this as a must, or we could treat it like a controlled substance inventory where the PIC ensures that someone has done a physical inspection and then the PIC incorporates that into as a piece of their self-inspection, the way you would a controlled substance.
So good, we could say the PIC must ensure a physical inspection of the PPL annually, and then the question with that is, does it have to be a pharmacist, or could anyone be the person who completes it?
This is board member Chin, that was my concern, is that they could assign this to a tech.
So the
But we have
PIC must ensure a pharmacist complete a physical inspection of the PPL. Seeing some head nods.
And that's what I was like, what something happened to PIC during that self-inspection. So, and just like control substance, you can assist, other pharmacists assist the PIC, just like in hospital, the big hospital, like it cannot do everything, you know? So other pharmacists assist. So in this case, like as a, yes, do we want that big do physical, self? Yeah, sure, absolutely. That's the ideal, that's the best practice. But in the event, if they're unable to, then it's okay that another pharmacist also.
So staff member Efremov, I'll just, if we can go around real quick, just to make sure that everybody is comfortable with this, so I can get a verbal too from Pinedo. For new paren 4 reads, the PIC must ensure a pharmacist completes a physical inspection of the PPL annually as part of their self-inspection of the pharmacy is required in OAR 855, 115, 210, paren 1, paren H. And I will start with Vice President Kirkbrand.
Yeah, I support that change. Ultimately, the responsibility falls on the PIC. So if the PIC is comfortable delegating that, I'm fine with that language to allow flexibility in situations where it is needed.
Board Member Smith,
Board Member Smith, nothing to add.
Board Member Patel,
Board member, yes, I'm fine.
Board Member Pinedo,
Board Member Pinedo, yes, I'm okay with that.
Board Member Grover,
I'm okay with it, thank you.
Board Member Chin,
Member Jen's fine.
and Board Member Hall,
Member Hall, I agree.
and Board President Joyce.
President Joyce, yeah, definitely.
Great. So how many are remaining in this? Sorry, if you could scroll down a little bit. I think we just have 5, 6, and that's it now because there's no more 7. Okay, so formerly 6 and paren 7, let's just do these together. Any comments, discussion, or questions?
This is Board Member Chin. I guess I'm a little confused about our previous conversation that if it's not a licensed person doing all of the putting in, taking out of the stock, the medications in the locker, then it's not really following. That's not in compliance with the rules of who has direct control over, it's a licensee that has control over that physical medication. So if we change that, then that is gonna be.
Yes, so staff member Efremov, I think what I heard the board say for now, keeping as a licensee, getting public feedback, and from that, I hear what you're saying, we will flag that paren 5 might need to be adjusted due to other comments in previous sections. Thank you for highlighting that, though, that is 100% true. Other comments or discussion? All right, just doing a quick time check, 11:15, we'll move on to the next section. In the schools there. Okay, so the next, where am I? So the following next sections, as you're seeing all of these being scrolled, are proposed to be struck as they are not needed. Either requirements are listed in other regulatory divisions, listed in different sections of these rules, or are not requirements the board wanted to require. So we propose to strike registration applications, that's 143.15, registration closure, 143.25, non-resident PPL affiliated pharmacy, 143.30, and personnel, 143.50. Does the board have any concerns, questions, or discussions related to what is being proposed to strike? Right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next section. So the next section is security. We have a few policy discussions in this one too. So this section also has been significantly changed. I think it would be easiest again just to read the rules in their entirety. We'll go to each policy discussion and then we'll open it up for the full deep dive of the rules. And this is fairly short, so not a lot to read. So paren 1, the pharmacy and the PIC must ensure a PPL utilizes appropriate security measures and monitoring of inventory to prevent theft and diversion. The pharmacy and the PIC must ensure a PPL prevents unauthorized access. The pharmacy and the PIC must ensure the PPL maintains confidentiality of patient information. And the pharmacy and the the pharmacy and the PIC must ensure the PPL correctly dispenses prescriptions. Paren two, a PPL must be placed in a location that is safe and secure as option one, missing the option one in front of it. Option two would be a PPL must, a little more descriptive, be placed in a secure indoor location that is climate controlled and protected from the elements and securely fastened to a permanent structure so it cannot be removed. Paren three, a PPL must utilize an alarm system that provides a real-time notification to the pharmacy and to the PIC that a PPL is not functioning correctly. That can mean a lot of things. And paren four, a PPL must utilize a surveillance system that records. So we have quite a few policy discussions in this. We'll start with the first one in this section with paren two. So this is really looking at, does the board want to stay general and just say that it needs to be safe and secure, or do you want to clarify what the board intends safe and secure means to licensees? And we'll start with board member Smith on this one.
Member Smith. I like option one. I think it gives them more, it leaves it more open for people to make the decision. And like I said, I do trust our pharmacists and pharmacies to make good choices about storage, and it is their license. So like that. Thank you.
Thank you, board member Patel.
Board Member Patel, yes, option one.
Thank you, board member Benito.
Board Member Pinedo, I don't think the PPL lockers are very cheap, so I'm sure the pharmacists are responsible enough for their own money.
Board member Kroger.
Board Member Kruger, I'm in favor of option one.
Thank you, board member Chin.
Kind of giggling at third board member Benito. So I'm not recommending that we be, that we go with option two, but if somebody does put a locker and it is something easy for somebody to pick up in their pickup and take away, I mean, have they failed in our rules to keep it safe and secure?
Staff member Efremov, if potentially that occurred, we would bring a case to you and the board would have to do that assessment.
Well, let's go with one and see what happens.
Board member Hall.
Member Hall, I agree with option one.
Board president Joyce.
President Joyce, you don't want to restrict, keep it open. The lockers that we currently have now in the state of Oregon are in secure areas. For example, the one pharmacy.com in Hillsborough, neighborhood health clinic, the one obviously in the VA hospital, and the one in Halem Bay are all inside the building, or inside or like accessible from the outside parts of the building. So they're all very secure. I definitely, that's the preferred method, but that's like, again, I don't want to restrict any kind of, mobility or limit or any kind of options for remote locations. But, echoing board member Pinedo, I mean, these are very expensive machines. So hopefully they can have them secured in remote areas, or not necessarily remote, but secure areas, I should say. Option one.
Vice President Kirkwood.
I'm not even sure we need this. So we address security right above that. We say that you need to utilize appropriate security measures. And then earlier, we say you have to follow all applicable pharmacy rules, which would address storage of drugs, being stored under correct temperatures. So, I mean, my opinion would be we don't need either of these things. I don't love either language, but if we feel like we have to say something, then I would go with option one. It's secure because the other ones are too detailed.
So there's been a new potential revision on the floor. Can we go around again with the group to see either keep language as you see in paren two or strike paren two? Board member Patel.
Yeah, that exactly I was thinking too, because how many times we just say, you know, it's all applicable rules, regulation, already there is out like, I think it's not, I would prefer to strike down.
Board Member Pineda?
I agree with that.
Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, Board Member Kirk, right on that. My caffeine must have lowered.
Got you.
You got me back, thank you. I agree with maybe striking it, and I think as board members are thinking the current 3 and current 4, also roll up into current 1 on the security measures piece, so I'm definitely in favor of striking 2, and I know the next policy discussion. But I think it's a similar sentiment.
Board Member Chin?
Member Chin will, align with licensees on their understanding of what other licensees will understand about these rules.
Sounds good. Board Member Hall?
So, I'm fine with that suggestion.
Board President Joyce?
Yeah, more bread choice. Yeah, my caffeine levels have passed half-life and expired. Yeah, I would prefer just to remove the language.
The Board Member Kirkbride started it all. Which would you like to do?
Please remove.
Thank you. All right, then we will move on to the next policy discussion. Yes, Board Member Patel?
So on the B, right, it says the pharmacy and the PIC must ensure PPL correctly dispense.
Yeah, we're gonna do policy discussions, then we'll open up for the full section. So that we get full understanding of everything that's left, and then we can rework the rules.
Sorry, my child outage just went.
Thank you, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that we cover all the possible thoughts, and then we can do the refining of the details of the language.
Blue boxes first. Blue boxes.
You're an excellent regulator, Board Member.
Great team.
So parent 3 is something that the board had touched on slightly at the last board meeting in October, but really did not have a robust conversation and asked to bring this back to this meeting so that you could think about it more. And I think this is also for what parent 4 is also where, or parent 4 what?
So they're renumbered, so I think I just
Oh,
renumbered.
2 and 3
Okay,
now.
so
2
it's
and 3,
gonna
you
be
got
2
me.
and 3.
Okay, sorry. I need to keep up. So parent 2, that makes more sense, is about the alarm system. So the board had touched a little bit on alarm system. There was no consensus one way or the other. So staff wanted to just put something together that if the board did want to potentially keep an alarm system, this would be the language as a example that you could utilize. I will open it up. I think not only, do you need this or not? Does the board want an alarm system notification, and what does that notification mean, and who does that need to go to? So there was a variety of things that we were considering, and not functioning correctly seemed like the most broader terminology related to, there was discussion about the alarm if someone's breaking into the PPL, or if it's not functioning and a prescription is stuck or something of that nature. We were trying to encompass all of those components that we heard a little bit touched upon in that conversation. But maybe moot point too. So we'll open it up for board discussion, and I think we're starting with Board Member Pinedo.
Board Member Pino,
I did the tone.
do these systems already have their own alarms embedded in them? I couldn't remember if we had talked about that.
Staff Member Efmoff, one thing to keep in mind, if you don't make something a requirement, whatever is out there that people are already utilizing, if it's not required, it wouldn't matter. But many of them do. But if you don't require it, they wouldn't have to.
Then I think we should keep it as a requirement.
Board Member Kroger?
Oh. Board Member Kroger, I don't think we should have this as a specific line item requirement. And I think, yeah, I think it rolls up a little bit into current 1A. I know that doesn't necessarily meet the intent around that it's not functioning correctly. But I don't think that this is needed. So, thank you.
Staff Member Effernoff, are you potentially proposing then, I guess when we revisit paren one, if additional language needs added in one to encompass it, or nothing needs added and we just don't need this?
Well, I think the security measures, so remember Kroger, 1A utilizes appropriate security measures. I think that really encompasses alarms or whatever these systems may have, like an appropriate.
Okay.
And same thing, it comes, if we see a case and they had nothing, is that really the standard of care? And was that, unprofessional conduct potentially by just, having high school lockers, right? Like,
Okay.
to me, that's how you kind of go through that. But I thought I read somewhere further in the rule, there is, maybe this is more just like record. Or the part about not functioning correctly could almost fall under the technology piece on that. It's not necessarily security. This is more on functionality, which seems like a technology aspect.
Thank you for that. That's helpful for clarity. Board Member Chin?
I'm remaining silent on this one, but are there model rules for this particular line item? Just out of curiosity, because I didn't come through every model rule.
Staff Member Effernoff, my memory is such, I would have to go back and look. I believe NABP model rules has some language related to this that's very specific, and I think many other boards adopted maybe that similar language is why it all seems a little repetitive, but again, I think it's also good to keep in mind that your rules were very different before too, when they were first put into effect. So there has been some time that PPLs have been around, and maybe a reason or rationale for variety in how they're articulated today. Board Member Hall?
Member Hall, so the rules, for like the brick and mortar pharmacies, that just apply to the PPLs, and I mean, there's security, rules written. Not sure if we need to state it again.
Staff Member Effernoff, one thing to think about this though too, that it's different than a pharmacy and that there potentially is not a person there when operating, right? So when you think about a pharmacy, there's always a pharmacist that is there during operations. Not that that changes this at all, but just that there are some differences when you're comparing the two.
I would hope that they would get real-time notification if there's, security issue with PPL. If we get that somewhere else and we don't need to write it here, then that's fine. But if not, then I would want something that, what's there seems okay. If the same, secure is enough like above, then that's fine.
Board President Joyce?
President Joy, so is the intent here to say that quote, surveillance system is more specific than appropriate security measures? Is that, because when you're saying surveillance system,
So Staff Member Effernoff, this is alarm system first we're talking about right now, and then surveillance system is next. So this is that alert system versus the camera recording versus the surveillance. So two different components. And I think for the board's consideration, when I hear another layer of the policy discussion that's been added is, does paren one encompass that what utilizes appropriate security? Would a reasonable, prudent pharmacy operate in an effective manner that would perform functions that the board deems to be appropriate security? And again, with that, the difficulty that can come into play is licensees understanding what is appropriate security. Is there that standard of practice care understanding related to that? And maybe there is. And then again, from there, what the board can also do that you've utilized in the past is that you see cases, and from cases you can refine rules again too. You can open them up, and if more clarity needs to be added at that time from things you're seeing that might not be as clear, there's all those opportunities in how you write rules.
okay, yeah. I'm somewhat neutral, because it's. I think if it were to be deleted, yeah, it wouldn't cause confusion if it's left on there. I don't think it would add much I don't think it would. It does, the way it is now, it's not, it seems clear and not necessarily repetitive. It's just more detailed, I guess. Is that appropriate security? Like, whether we leave it in there or delete it, I don't have any strong feelings.
Vice President Kirkbride?
So right now we have, I think appropriately removed a lot of language and, around the device itself. And so it's pretty generic. We don't have a lot in here about what device they are required to use. There's very few things. And so if we do want something that provides some sort of, in the scenario where it is distant from the pharmacy, where it provides some additional security measures and like real-time monitoring, we do have to keep it in here. So yes, we can hope, but if we want to go beyond that and require it, we would have to keep this language in here. So as I'm thinking through the point made that the difference, and I went back and looked at Division 41 security, a lot of it is around like securing the entry to the pharmacy. And we don't require alarms. We just require that you secure the entry to the pharmacy. But I think the point that this would be unattended, is a good point. So I think this is a little bit different than the previous point in that, I think I'm more in favor of having these types of things, just because we have so very little elsewhere about what type of device they should use. I would be in favor of maybe like alarm or other system, because I'm thinking about if this is 150 miles away, when I think of an alarm, I'm thinking of like an audible alarm, like how is that gonna help? If it's a real-time notification, it may not be an alarm, it might be a notification. So maybe clarifying that it's not like an alarm, like or maybe it is, or maybe it's both, or maybe it's some other kind of system. I think sometimes we try to guess how people are gonna solve things, and I always want to keep it as open as possible, but I do think there needs to be some sort of, ability for the pharmacist to know what's going on with that machine when it is distant to the pharmacy. That's my opinion.
Smith?
And like, one thing I'm kind of thinking about when I look at this is like, what the case would look like, with this. Like, if we didn't have an alarm, kind of what that case would look like if it was violated, and if we have an alarm, what that would look like if it was like not being used. And I'm kind of struggling to see how that would occur, not saying it like couldn't occur. I guess I feel like pharmacies are gonna be paying close attention to these lockers, or at least I would hope so. And I don't know, I feel like kind of leaving this more open, would be better than having more requirements. That's where I'm gonna follow this.
Board Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, I think we do not need number 3 and number 4, and I'll tell you why. Those prescription locker, it's easier to break into the pharmacy than those prescription locker. Number 2, we had break-in 3 years ago. It took them 5 minutes. We have alarm system, we have real notification, we have surveillance system, everything we have it, right? But if someone is going to break in, I was 15 minutes away from pharmacy, do you really think I'm the first one who's going to go in? No, the cop will be there. That's what we have alarm system and everything. But the point is, and why we need alarm system, because sometimes this PPL is going to be in, let's say another, let's say in the police station, or let's say in the hospital, for the other, or grocery store, right? I mean, they're going to have their own alarm system too. So we need like two, they have their alarm system, and when they open, they can access to this prescription locker, and then we are going to have another alarm system for my prescription locker. I don't think so. It make any sense to me. The more alarm system, more the notification, more the surveillance system, that does not equal to more security, no theft. If the theft is going to happen, it's going to be happen. So I think we should leave that up to the outlet, that how they're going to do the monitoring and security measures. This is all like, it's fine, but I don't think so that equals to more security and no theft. So I think we should strike down 3 and 4 and just keep the on, which it says like utilize appropriate security measures and monitoring.
So at this time, sorry, staff member from off, I hear that we have 2 people that want to keep, 3 people that want to remove, and 3 people that are okay either way. So if we could revisit, I'll start with Board President Joyce, and it was also Board Member Hall and Board Member Chin that I think we need to hear back from.
And,
Please, oh, sorry, Board
sorry.
President Joyce.
Well, President Joyce, yeah, I would prefer to keep this language in there, to have the alarm system, documented in our rules.
Board Member Hall?
Member Hall. I'm fine with taking it out for the most part, especially the alarm part, but I think we should have something about real-time notification if there's something not working correctly. Can I make a quick comment, Board Member Kruger, on the real-time notification? Remember, this will be used at times that the parent pharmacy is not open to. So what is real-time notification gonna do? Great, alarmed on Saturday, I don't show up till Monday. Or are we expecting the pharmacists who are in charge of a beeper on them this weekend? So like, just like, to me, real-time notification doesn't really make sense. And the other thing, at least at this time, there's no controls in these. It's not allowed. So typically pharmacies are being robbed, or theft and diversion is happening. Generally leans towards controlled substances. Those are typically the drugs that people are after, not always, but mostly. And then we've already articulated that this must be in a safe and secure place. You must have security measures that prevent theft and diversion. So, and I think it goes back to Board Member Patel's, that it might be in another outlet. It might not be, not outlet, sorry, like other store, or another building that has its own security measures. But I think back to the real-time notification piece, there should be some sort of notification, but is real-time really what's necessary for the practicality of this? And I think that there's so many scenarios, there's so many what ifs in contemplating this, that we're not gonna be able to solve for everything. And to me, it's just like, there's no controls in these. Granted, there's non-controlled prescriptions that people wanna get and all sorts of other crazy stuff, but I think generally the likelihood is low that this is gonna be targeted. Remember Hall, I guess I was thinking more some kind of timely notification. I mean, if there's a PPL that's 100 miles away and the patients aren't able to get their medications on a holiday weekend or something, I mean, wouldn't
Board Member
you
Patel,
wanna know?
Board Member Patel, but then holiday weekend, that means the parent is also closed. And if it's not working, then it's technology issue. And what if this is like PPL only, open during the so-and-so hours, let's say if I'm going to have.
I feel, I guess. But remember, Kruger, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any sort of like communication system to like alert the parent pharmacy that something is going on. I don't think that's
the right answer either. I just think that within this part of the security, specifically security rule, the alarm system, and we can go back and go around the surveillance system. I don't know if we need to specifically line item list those, like bright line regulation these, because we've expected them to have appropriate security measures. And depending on what type of PPL you're using, where you're locating it, yes, there might be a reason for them to have an alarm and a surveillance system, but there might also, it could be at a police station. I'm like, do we really need any more alarms on, in that like location? So that's,
I didn't say I wanted alarm. Yeah.
you're more on the notification.
So staff member up front, maybe it would be helpful, and I know I'm trying to silo these so much. It might be good if we went down to technology just to read that really quick too, because this does seem to interface with this, and maybe I'm just like for board member Hall too, to read what is in technology, not that that's what's going to stay, but at least that will help you maybe think about this a little more. So I can just read it really quick too while you're getting there. So for outlet technology, it's 1430205. We erased a bunch before it. Pharmacy must ensure a PPL utilizes a shared computer system and has an appropriate technology or interface to allow access to information required to dispense prescription and non-prescription drugs, devices, and related supplies. A pharmacy must test a PPL and verify the unit is operational and functioning in all aspects prior to its utilization. Paren 3, a pharmacy must develop, implement, and enforce a plan for routine maintenance of the PPL. And Paren 4, this might get there, maybe not. A pharmacy must develop, implement, and enforce a plan for responding to and recovering from an interruption of service. We can pull that out.
Yeah, I like that.
Remember Kirkbride, I would just maybe add in that parent 5, identifying an interruption of service. I think that's where board member Hall's concern is how would that be identified? So maybe if we add the word identifying, responding to, and recovering from.
We'll put that in for now. We can revisit with everyone when we get down to that section, if that's okay.
Wait, and 4, 3.
So it's a plan for identifying, responding to, and recovering from interruption of service, I believe.
Or board member Hall.
Overall, yeah, I like that, and then I'd be fine with it going away. Sorry, I'm on an older document, I think, but
No,
it's section we were on before.
Yep.
3 and, or no.
I think it changed numbers too. We got to go back up to security.
Yep.
It would have been security old number.
As long as they can identify.
4. Great.
I'm fine with,
Number 2.
getting rid of
So we're saying straight
2 and 3 here.
And board member Chin, did you have an opportunity? I apologize. Did you get to redo this? Okay.
And I would only say that in, observation or board member Kroger's comment about these are not going to hold controlled substances, that the public doesn't know DEA rule. The people who are drug seeking don't give a rip about DEA rule. If they think there are drugs in there, baby, they're gonna be trying to get the drugs. So I think that's a little overstretched about, that's not where they're gonna look. So unless you're gonna put a big sign on here, which we're not, because we're not directing them, because we are silent on the issue. We are silent on the issue, so nobody knows what's in there.
No percent here.
It's literally gonna have pharmacy signs all over it, so it's gonna be a target, I can see that.
So summary here, staff member Efremov, I think we have the majority to strike Paren 2 at this time. Understanding and hearing all the board's members' comments again, this isn't going to rulemaking, or there's many more iterations of things happening here. So we can also, hopefully the public is listening to these conversations, and when we seek feedback can help weigh in on some of these things also. Because I do think a big component too that we hope to seek from the public is when terminology, if you can scroll up a little bit too, talks about the ensuring a PPL uses appropriate security measures, that licensees know what that means. They want to be successful too. They want the board to help them be successful. So hopefully we'll be able to get all of those kind of comments related to that also. Paren 3, I think we dipped into this a little bit too, but we'll just open it again and do a round robin related to, this is a PPL must utilize a surveillance system. So again, the board did not have a robust conversation. There was no direction related to this. And again, surveillance is actually that video recording of the system or the area around the system. And if you did choose to go this route related to records, staff would highly recommend that you articulate record for how long, because all of our other records, it would default to division. Oh, it's not in 41 anymore, whatever our division that we keep changing, that I wish I could remember the numbers. Yeah, universal.
136.
136? Thank you.
All right.
I don't know. Just gonna look it up real quick.
Universal? Joe Ball?
I'm paying attention.
Yeah,
104. It's 104. Thank you. 104. So that would be 3 years. So you wouldn't be able to keep surveillance records for 3 years, I would think, but that might be a moot point too. So let's go around and hear how the board feels about this related to Paren 3. It's Board Member Kroger that gets to start.
I think you all know how I feel. No need for this to be listed. I'm not saying it's not needed to have a surveillance system. I just don't think it needs to be specifically listed in rule.
Board Member Chin?
Unclear. Whether we need it or not.
Okay, fair enough. We can come back to you too. Board Member Hall?
Overall, I'm fine with, striking this. I feel like it's addressed.
Board President Joyce?
Board Joyce, I'm more leaning towards the, having it in here. Yeah, and having it in here and then maybe having it utilize, the surveillance system when, the machine itself is being utilized, kind of like an ATM machine. I don't know, I do fear, like when there's theft, or any kind of, if it breaks down, there's theft. I also, want it to be caught on video. So I would prefer to have the language in here to show video surveillance or system surveillance of some sort.
You. Vice President Kirkbride?
I think this particular one is covered in appropriate security measures, so I would be in favor of this one being removed.
Board Member Smith?
Board Member Smith, I don't feel this will be removed.
Board Member Benito? Or Patel? I'm gonna do it.
Oh, no.
It's almost lunchtime. Feel a little bit of grace.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let's remove number 4. I don't think so. That's going to be more active.
Thank you, Board Member Patel. Board Member Benito?
Board Member Pinello, I think it's already being addressed, so I think this, in this specific area, is fine to be struck.
Right, and I'll come back to Board Member Chin if you wanted to share any further thoughts you have.
This is Board Member Chin. I guess my thought is that we as board members who deal in regulation day in and day out have our sense of understanding of what this means. And we're assuming that licensees all know what this means. And if you all are comfortable that we're giving licensees all the information they need with the fewest of words to succeed and keep everything and everybody safe, then I'm okay with your majority decision, but I just caution about how we think of things in terms of our higher level of understanding of legislation. Clemson.
All right, it sounds like we have direction to strike at this time and really great conversations and things to consider and think about when we're reviewing rules. So thank you everyone for that. I'll just do the next section real quick because this one's easy. The next sections are proposed to be struck that are not needed, again, either because the requirements are listed in other regulatory divisions, they're listed in different sections of these rules, or are not requirements the boards wanted to require. This is 143, 120, drug procurement, 143, 125, drug storage, 143, 130 drug loss, 143, 0150 outlet sanitation, 143, 155 outlet minimum equipment requirements, and 143, 0200 outlet general requirements. While you're all getting dizzy as we scroll down, we'll stop. I do want to do a quick time check. It is 11:50. We are moving on to the technology section. We got a little bit of a sneak peek preview before. I did want to ask Board President Joyce, do you want to try to do this section or do you want to pause and pick this up after lunch? How would you like to move?
I would, prefer that we just pick this up after lunch and not start. Does anybody disagree with that or any strong feelings? Should we start this now or just put it on pause? We have about 10 minutes before we were originally slated for lunch.
What is our timeline for the rest of our,
We have this afternoon as well to continue this discussion.
I'm not really about everything else we have to discuss in a brief time for.
As Steph and Berfimoff, I think that you are in a good position to be able to continue this length of discussion on the remaining rules to be able to complete and still get the rest of the items done. I'm looking at our ED.
We need to, sorry, Staff Member Melvin, we need to speak with President Joyce over lunch. So I would say we stop for lunch now and have a discussion and come back at 1 o'clock as planned for now.
So yeah, let's break for lunch, come back 1 o'clock to continue this.
Thank you.
Hey, Bree.
Yes.